One of my very first memories of being in Sunday school was being at Second Presbyterian Church in Little Rock, Arkansas, in the kindergarten class. And they had this really cool apparatus that when you turned it all the way over where it was flat, it was kind of domed like this. It had steps, so you could step here, 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 and here. Looking at it as an adult, the steps weren't very big. When I was 5 years old, those were big steps. When you turn this over, it was really cool because then it became a boat, and it had little seats in it, and you could rock back and forth. Anybody else ever see one of those? They still make them today, I checked. So this kindergarten class had this, and this is the first time I can remember hearing this story about Jesus and the boat and the storm coming up. And what was so cool is that I got to get in the boat with Brett Campbell. Now today, people would say Brett Campbell had ADD. At that time, we just said he had a lot of energy. So when you were in the boat with Brett Campbell and he was making it rock back and forth with the wind, you knew you were in the boat with wind. Well, this particular time I was in and Brett was really making it go, and Rob Ragsdale walks up and gets his foot caught underneath, and it goes over that, and the teacher made us all get out and go sit down. I am still leveling some anger at Rob Ragsdale for making that stop, for putting his foot underneath there. But Jesus and the calming of the storm has always been one of those stories from my childhood that was important and that stayed with me. And how cool, because I was always a little afraid of storms. My older sister tells of a time of our grandfather holding her up at about 2.5 on the front porch as the storm is coming in and telling her, "Do not be afraid." And she goes, "I remember being little and being engulfed by his arms and the thunder and the lightning hitting all over the place, and him saying, 'It's okay. It's God talking to us. Do not be afraid.'" Now, my grandfather died just before I was born, so I never had anyone tell me that, do not be afraid. So if I'm perfectly honest, if I'm in a home by myself and lightning and thunder comes through, I still don't handle it quite so well. So these disciples are out in the boat, and the wind comes up, and it's howling, and it's really loud, and their fears come. So I invite you to sit for a little bit and think about what fears you're dealing with right now. I know on a personal note, just this week, my friend from seminary was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago, and they thought it was gone, and it has just come back. And then my son's mother-in-law just had a double mastectomy because she had cancer 10 years ago and it just came back. I know there's a lot of things going on in people's lives, and there's a lot of fear and a lot of waves and turbulence that are coming up. So I'm going to invite you to watch this video and just sit back and think about the waves in your life. So the disciples were out on that sea with the waves and the wind. And sometimes the wind makes the waves in and of themselves even bad, because rain doesn't bother me, but you add that lightning and thunder, that visual and that loud noise pounding on me, and it can get scary. And the fear. In April of 2001, prior to the world changing forever, I was sitting in a Greek 2 class in seminary. We had been there for the whole first semester. We were coming towards the end of the second semester, and our Greek professor had us reading the New Testament in Greek. And he picked this story because he was picking stories that we knew, so it would help us to be able to read it in Greek and understand it, or at least that was the theory behind it. I still kind of question if it actually worked, but that was the theory behind it. And so we were reading this Greek, and it was my turn to read, and I read, and when I got through, I looked up at the professor, and he kind of smiled, and he goes, "You must be from the south of Greece." I said, "Apparently so." And he said, "In someplace close to Mexico, because you've got a really good Spanish thing going on there too." All right, what can I say? But he said, "You came to a word that's really interesting, because in English, it is translated walk. Jesus was walking on the water." And that's the story that we tell, especially when we teach it to our young people, of Jesus walking on the water. But that is not what the word really means. What the word really means is that Jesus was directed. He knew where he was going. He was insistent. He was walking quite straight to those disciples because he could see that they were fearful. Now, doesn't that make a difference in the story, knowing that Jesus had a place to go, was on the way to do that? Then Jesus was just, la-da-da, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's raining, I'm walking on water. It was Jesus was saying, I see these people are afraid, and I am walking to get there as quickly as I can. I had a friend in seminary who said that he was Christmas tree shopping with his wife, who was 38 weeks pregnant, and a 2-year-old. And they were in a grocery store parking lot that had all of the trees lined up, and they had 2 poles, and then they had ropes in 3 places on the poles so they could lay the trees beside them. And he said the 3 and 40ths of them were standing there, and they were looking at trees, and all of a sudden he sees his wife, 38 weeks pregnant, hurling herself over the ropes and running, and he can't see what's happening, and all of a sudden she turns around with this belly, and she's got this 2-year-old. He said, I didn't even know the child was gone, but my wife, she knew. And it didn't matter that she was 38 weeks pregnant. That was her baby. That was her child who was on his way into the parking lot. And she went and ran, and he said, that's how I see Jesus in this place. Jesus is the mom of the 2-year-old that's 38 weeks pregnant, and there is not a rope tall enough to keep that mama away from her child. So Jesus is walking with purpose to his disciples who are afraid, because he wants to calm their fears. So I want you to watch this next video and know that Jesus is walking towards you, and that whatever was really bubbling up, that Jesus is going to take care of it and calm it down. So Jesus takes our fears away. And oftentimes, when they're taken away, we ask Jesus to do it the way we want it done, which is exactly what Peter did. Peter said, "Oh, this is great. I'm not afraid now, so much so that I'm going to get out of the boat." And we know the story that Jesus sunk. So we have these fears that come up in us because we can't control things. And then we know that Jesus is coming towards us and Jesus is going to help us. And we are so quick to say, "Jesus, we want your help and we want you to help us this way. If you can make this happen, and this happen, that will be great. And I'm going to be disappointed if you do it any other way." Or we can listen to the words of the Our Father that we say every single week. "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thy will be done." So what I encourage you to do today is, when the storms come in your life, and we all have them, instead of asking God to take care of them the way we want them to take care of, know that Jesus is on Jesus' way to us as quickly as possible. And know, too, that if we can let go and say, "Thy will be done," instead of "my will be done," we won't get calm seas, but we will get beautiful, tranquil seas, and maybe even the Holy Spirit will come through.